Parents always loved my adopted sister more, especially when I built my own business. They tried to make me share my store opening with her graduation, so I finally got my revenge. 24M, grew up in what seemed like a normal middle-class household in the suburbs, but my parents' behavior has been a constant source of pain throughout my life. They built their entire reputation in our community around being these amazing people who adopted a little girl and loved her even more than their biological son. Not many people know the full story of how this affected me. When I was 6 years old, my parents brought home Emma, 21F, my adopted sister, and everything in my life changed after that day. The day my parents sat me down in our living room to tell me about possibly adopting a sister, I couldn't contain my excitement. I spent most of my afternoons alone in our backyard, making up games and waiting for my parents to come home from work. I didn't have any siblings to play with, and the neighborhood kids were either much older or younger than me. The idea of having a sister to share my toys with and someone to keep me company during those long afternoons felt like the perfect solution. When Emma first arrived, it was exactly what I had hoped for. We played together, shared snacks, and I finally had someone to talk to during those quiet afternoons at home. The changes in my family started small, but they kept building up over time. My parents began focusing all their attention on Emma, making every decision based on what was best for her. They would cancel our weekend family activities if Emma wasn't in the mood, change dinner plans to match her preferences, and adjust their schedules to attend all her school events while missing mine. I started feeling pushed aside in my own home, like I was becoming invisible to my own parents. I know people might think I'm just jealous, but there's more to this story than simple sibling rivalry. The contrast in how my parents handled childcare for Emma versus me was pretty stark. Within a week of Emma's arrival, my mom submitted her resignation letter at the accounting firm where she'd worked for 8 years to become a full-time mom. This was completely different from when I was born. Mom went back to her office job as soon as her maternity leave ended, leaving me with different caregivers. My parents were always stressed about money back then, working overtime and weekend shifts, which meant I spent most of my time either in my grandparents' small apartment or with whatever teenage babysitter they could afford that month. The babysitting situation was far from ideal. These girls, usually high school students trying to earn extra cash, treated their job as a chance to hang out with their boyfriends rather than actually watching me. I'd spend hours alone in my room while they sat in the living room, texting or talking on their phones. Sometimes their boyfriends would climb through our back window or sneak in through the garage door when they thought I was asleep. I kept telling my parents about these incidents, and they'd fire the current sitter only to hire another one who acted the same way. This cycle continued for years, and I spent most of my early childhood feeling like nobody really cared about my well-being. When Emma came, it seemed like it would change everything for the better. Despite being only 6, I took my role as a big brother immediately. I shared all my toys with her and even helped her learn the alphabet. At least whatever I could do at the age of 6, I did. Having my mom at home full-time seemed like an added bonus. I thought we'd finally get to do all the things I'd watched other kids do with their moms, like baking cookies or going to the park. Instead, my mom devoted all her time and attention to Emma, treating her like a princess while expecting me to be mature and independent because I was the big brother. Things really started to get complicated when my parents decided to change my birthday arrangements. Emma had been found abandoned at a shopping mall, and the orphanage had no records of her actual birth date. The doctors ran various tests, physical examinations, dental checks, and developmental assessments, and estimated she was around 3 years old when she was found. Instead of keeping her assigned date from the orphanage or choosing any other day from the entire calendar year, my parents decided that Emma should share my birthday. They presented this idea like it was some sort of special honor for me. Those early joint birthday celebrations were bearable, but I started noticing subtle changes each year. While I still received presents and had some cake, the parties became increasingly focused on Emma. Relatives and family friends would arrive with twice as many gifts for her, going on and on about how special it was that we celebrated together, while barely acknowledging my presence. Everyone seemed fascinated by Emma's background story, treating her like a queen rather than just another kid. Meanwhile, I sat there opening my presents quietly, trying not to feel invisible at my own birthday party as people crowded around Emma to hear her retell the same adoption story they'd heard dozens of times before. My parents' decision to make Emma share my birthday still bothers me when I think about it. The orphanage had already given her an official date, the day she was found. We also had my grandparents' anniversary in March, my aunt's birthday in September, or literally any other day that could have become Emma's special date. But my parents specifically chose my birthday, claiming it would make Emma feel more connected to the family. For most kids, a birthday is the one day of the year that feels magical and where they are the center of attention. But my parents turned this simple childhood joy into another reminder that Emma's needs always came first. They wrapped up this decision in pretty words about family bonds and sharing, making it impossible for a 6-year-old to express any disappointment without feeling selfish. My uncle was the only one who seemed to notice something was wrong, pulling me aside during that first shared party to ask if I was really okay with all this. By age 10, birthdays had become something I dreaded instead of celebrated. Emma controlled every aspect of our joint celebrations, from choosing the cake, which I didn't even like, to picking princess themes that made me feel out of place at my own party. The guest list situation was particularly unfair. Emma would fill our house with 20 or more friends from her various activities, while I was strictly limited to inviting just 5 of mine. This rule meant I had to carefully choose between my friends each year, sometimes damaging relationships with those who couldn't come. My best friend stopped talking to me for weeks after I couldn't invite him to my 11th birthday. The inequality of these celebrations became even more obvious when I asked to invite my friend as a 6th guest one year. My parents immediately shut down the request, saying we'd already reached the maximum number of guests our house could accommodate. Yet somehow, there was always room for Emma's friends and their mothers, who apparently needed to supervise their daughters at all times. When I pointed out that my friends came alone, my parents dismissed my concerns with their standard excuse about girls needing more supervision. Meanwhile, Emma's friends and their moms took over our entire living room, treating me like I was just another guest at what was supposed to be my birthday too. I gathered up the courage several times to suggest having separate parties. Each attempt ended the same way. My parents would shut me down with their well-rehearsed responses about Emma's difficult past. They'd remind me how she didn't know her real birthday, as if that somehow justified taking over mine, or they'd bring up her tough start in life for the 100th time, completely ignoring that they were giving her a tough present by constantly dismissing my feelings. These conversations always left me feeling guilty for even bringing up the subject, like I was somehow being selfish for wanting one day to myself. Eventually, I stopped fighting for my birthday. I learned to put on a smile and play my assigned role in what had become Emma's special day, featuring her brother. The hurt didn't go away. It just became a familiar feeling that surfaced every birthday. During these parties, I'd sit quietly in the corner while Emma opened twice as many presents as me, trying to look happy as relatives fawned over her and barely noticed my existence. The one bright spot in all of this was discovering my love for creating things with my hands. It started small, turning an empty cereal box into a pencil holder one boring afternoon. Soon, I was transforming all sorts of household items into art pieces. Our garage became my go-to place, filled with bins of collected materials, old newspapers, plastic bottles, broken jewelry, anything I could repurpose. I spent hours watching DIY videos, learning new techniques for making everything from decorative wall hangings to intricate jewelry pieces. My room slowly filled with my creations. This was something that belonged entirely to me, something Emma couldn't share or take over. What started as a therapeutic hobby in my teens had grown into a successful online business by my early 20s. I spent countless nights perfecting product photos, writing descriptions, and managing my online shop while working a day job at a local coffee shop. My handmade items started gaining attention on social media, and soon I had regular customers from across the country. My small apartment turned into a workshop with shelves full of supplies and a dedicated shipping station where my dining room used to be. After 3 years of careful financial planning, working overtime shifts, and reinvesting almost every penny of profit, I finally had enough savings to open my own physical store. The space I found was perfect, a former boutique in a busy shopping district with large windows that let in plenty of light. It wasn't a huge store, but it was the dream I had been working towards for over a decade. As I prepared for the grand opening, I thought back to all the sacrifices I had made to get to this point. Missing out on holidays with family, cutting ties with people who didn't understand my dedication, and putting in long hours while juggling a job that didn't fulfill me. But now, finally, I was going to have something for myself, something that was entirely mine. I told my parents about the opening, expecting them to finally acknowledge my achievements. Instead, they casually dropped the bomb that they wanted to combine my grand opening with Emma's graduation ceremony. They said it would be a family celebration, with both events happening on the same day in our store. They expected me to change the date, make Emma's achievement the centerpiece, and let her invite her entire graduating class, along with their parents. I was furious. I had spent years pouring my heart into building this business, and now they were telling me to share it with a ceremony for a kid who had never shown any interest in the things I loved. I pushed back, but my parents acted like I was being unreasonable, just like they always did when they wanted something. In the end, I made a choice. I took my revenge in the only way I knew how, by making my opening day the best it could be without them. I invited the people who had supported me from the beginning and made the event an intimate celebration. I didn't care about Emma's graduation or what my parents thought anymore. It was the first time I had ever felt truly free of their expectations. As the day unfolded, I finally understood something crucial. Sometimes the best way to get back at the people who try to hold you down is to succeed on your own terms.